Hello, and welcome back to Random Vids. So, for today's video, we're going to be talking about some more Total Drama. It's been a hot minute since we talked about Total Drama All-Stars, and we ranked every episode from Total Drama All-Stars. That's a really interesting season, because I feel like one half of the season is really good, and then the other half is just really meh. Now, one season I haven't ranked yet is Total Drama Pahkitew Island, and I wanted to wait a bit before I ranked this season because I've only seen this season 2 times, both over a year ago, so I wanted to kind of refresh myself. So yes, that means I had to rewatch Total Drama Pahkitew Island to kind of get refreshed and rewatch the season, kind of see where the episodes go, kind of get like a I don't know what the word is, but I guess like just get refreshed on the whole season in general and just kind of relook at everything to be like, alright, now I know what's what, because this is easily my least watched season. Okay, well, besides the reboots, but out of the main ones that's been out forever and ever. So Pahkitew Island is a very interesting season. So they're on a brand new island thanks to Chris blowing up Camp Wawanakwa, and now it's time to see what this new island has, with a brand new cast of characters and 13 episodes. Let's get into me ranking every episode from Total Drama Pahkitew Island from worst to best. So number 13 and my least favorite episode from Total Drama Pahkitew Island is Pahked with Talent. Jeez Louise, what is it with the second to last episode always being so crappy in Total Drama? Ever since Revenge of the Island, the second to last episode has always been so slow and painful to sit through. And just like Revenge, it's my least favorite episode of Pahkitew Island. So what happens in this episode, you may ask? So we have our final three: Sugar, Sky, and Sean. A very interesting final three. And for this second to last challenge, Chris is letting them pick the challenge. So whatever they end up picking, they have to do. So Sean ends up picking a hurdle jump, so they jump over all these little hurdles. Or no, that's what Sky picks. Sean picks you have to jump from tree to tree, and then Sugar picks a talent show where they have to do a talent on this talent show thingy. And Sugar thinks she got this in the bag, but Sky and Sean end up impressing the judges, which is Chris, a random bear, and a random intern. Okay. Where the heck has Chef been? Chef just randomly stopped appearing in a lot of episodes after Revenge, just because they stopped with a lot of the story parts of the show and focused more on the challenge, which I don't understand why, because I mean, yeah, you gotta focus on the challenges, but what about the story itself? So they kind of just killed off Chef's character. He's just kind of standing around in the background. I'm glad with the reboot seasons, he's a much more, I shouldn't say developed, but he's in the seasons. Like, he's not just standing around, basically with no voice lines. So, man, this episode meanders along. It's so slow. It's so boring. I don't think Pahkitew Island has necessarily horribly bad episodes, but they just get so dry and boring. The problem is that this cast is very one-dimensional and just very dry and boring. And a lot of them feel like copy and paste characters from other seasons, except for like one or two. Like Ella is definitely a clone of like Gwen and Zoe, and Sugar is definitely a clone of Owen and Scott, just female. And all these characters, and Sugar and Ella, oh my god, Sugar and Sky aren't as good as like the other ones that I said. So they're copy and pasting characters from the original seasons just to make them very boring and bland. I don't understand what they were thinking when they chose this cast. Recently, they finally had the reboot season on Hulu, so I finally got to watch that, and I was way more impressed with every character. Even like my least favorite characters of this season had great things about them that made them more interesting than like half the cast in this season. It's insane, and man, this episode is bull crap. They do nothing but meander along, They fight a little bit. They have way too much fighting in this season, and a lot of it is just a bunch of stupid stuff. Like, why is Sky, Sean, and Sugar just randomly? I know, 3 S's. That's crazy. Why are these 3 characters just randomly fighting with each other too many times? Shouldn't, like, Sky and Sean team up to get rid of Sugar? That would make way more sense than seeing the 3 just fight the whole time. It's a very dumb episode, and I personally think it's the absolute worst. Nothing else I have to say. Just a very pointless second to last episode. The best thing about it is that I know that the season's almost over. So, let's move on to number 12, which is Lies, Cries, and One Big Prize. Well, we've reached the absolute worst finale out of any Total Drama season so far. So, I don't mind the final 2 we have. Sky and Sean both definitely deserved it probably the most out of any character. Sean is a really good character, and probably the only, really good character in this season. Sky, she's alright. She's not my personal favorite, but she's okay, I guess. And them in the final 2, okay, what's Chris gonna make them do this time? He's gonna make them pick, or not pick, but they have to get partners from the cast that originally got voted out. And it's going to be a random spin too. So Sean ends up landing on Jasmine, good for her, and Sky lands on Dave. So we have to do a bunch of different challenges together to see who, I guess, the helpers will help until a little plot twist, which I'll talk about in a sec. So Jasmine overall is a pretty decent character. I mean, not my favorite, but she's a better character from pahkitew Island. And then, there's Dave. I cannot stand Dave. He is easily the worst total drama character of all time. And he survived to the final 7. The final 7, and made it into the last episode, of course. What I hate about Dave is his character, downfall. Like, he started off as a okay enough character, being very germophobic and very, I guess, scared of any tiny little dirt he would touch. As the season goes on, he grows feelings for Sky, and Sky grows feelings for Dave. But Sky continues to tell Dave that she doesn't want to date him during the race, or during the season, and will date him, I guess, afterwards. I don't know how that will work. But Dave gets more and more insane as the season goes on, continuing to pester Sky and want her to date him, or else, I don't even know what Dave... he just gets super sad and bawls like a little baby. That's literally what this dude does. He's a spoiled brat, and he's so annoying to watch. Because anytime Sky rejects him, he just says, "Oh no, Sky didn't just do that. Like, that was just my imagination." And that goes on throughout the whole season, or at least the second half of the season that he's in. It gets so annoying to watch, especially his character downfall just gets more. He just gets more and more insane as the season goes on, and he gets to the point where he's unbearable to watch. And then in the episode that we'll talk about later, Sky finally lets her anger out on Dave, and then Dave still doesn't get the hint that Sky doesn't like her, or doesn't want to date her, that Sky doesn't want to date him, I should say. This season is making me all messed up. So, Dave still... oh my god, this dude, he doesn't know when to stop. She clearly said no, and if she was interested, she would have said yes. So please, Dave, stop. You just make the season more dumb than it needs to be. Anywho, after being rejected in the episode he gets voted out on, he basically is the main reason why he got voted out. He didn't even want to be in the show anyway. Jeez Louise. I hate that guy so much. And of course he ends up having to come back in this episode to help Sky. I wonder how well that goes. Sky ends up getting him twice too, because, Chris said, "Alright, if you don't want him, that's fine. You can continue, you can spin the roulette again." But it lands on Dave twice. And Sky ends up getting Dave, so of course we get to see more of the stupid Dave trying to get Sky stuff, and Sky clearly saying no, and Dave being as annoying as possible. You know what, I can rant all day about this episode. That's probably half the reason why this episode is bad, is because Dave is in it, and boy is he a horrible total drama character. Anywho, Sky, I guess, pretends to like Dave then, throughout the episodes, and then he can help Sky out, because if Sky doesn't like Dave, then Dave will not help out Sky, and Dave will act like, his life is meaningless. Okay, probably not, but you get what I mean. Dave is just such a spoiled brat, and he gets so annoying. Anywho, moving on. So at one point, Chris, of course being the nice guy he is this season, ends up revealing to Jasmine and Dave about things Sean and Sky said about them. So they both get mad, and Chris lets them, I guess, sort of, use payback against them? Ay, ay, ay. I don't even know what this season is going for anymore. So while Dave is constantly trying to crush Sky, because now he finds out that Sky has a boyfriend, and never once told him. Okay, yeah, Sky should have told him, or at least tried to break. I don't know what they were trying to do with Sky's character. But of course made Dave really mad and want to hurt Sky, and couldn't really care less about Sky anymore. And completely turned 100% insane, and wanted to burn the money in front of Sky, because if they wouldn't win, then Dave and Jasmine wouldn't win. Jasmine, obviously being the great character she is, starts feeling bad for the stuff that they're putting Sean and Sky through. So I love the ending where Sean wins and Jasmine comes over and they start dating, I guess. That's a pretty good way to at least end their relationship, or to end this season with their relationship. But man, Dave was so annoying that Chris didn't even want him on the plane, and they just left him at the island to deal with the bear. A bear, I guess. A robot bear. I don't know. I could care less. This episode is so boring, so dry, and the writers clearly don't care anymore. They're just like, you know what, here's the finale to Pahkitew Island. Don't worry, this is the last bad season. And then we'll take about a 10-year break. We'll give you a Redonkulous Race spinoff, and then maybe we'll come back with the reboots. Good lord, this episode is just so boring. And like I said, Dave is in it, so he ruins it. I hate Dave with a passion. He's probably half the reason why this episode sucked. Alright, nothing else I have to say. Let's move on to number 11, which is A Blast from the Past. When I was rewatching this season, honestly, the first few episodes aren't half bad, but once we get to A Blast from the Past, that's when I remembered why I despise this season. And half the reason has to do with our host, Chris. What did Chris do? He's a great character. I like him. He's a good host. Well, unfortunately, with our Pahkitew Island writers, they made Chris this just very annoying, unbearable, just greedy, downright cruel host. I will never get under why they did this. I wouldn't... It's so stupid. He's already been falling downhill since Action, so... I mean... But at least in Action and World Tour, and even parts of Revenge, and even like a few scenes from All Stars, for crying out loud, are tolerable. But Chris this season was just so out of character. I don't know what the heck they wanted to do with him, but it certainly wasn't going back to Islands Chris. But man, he's just, I don't even know where to start with this episode. So for the challenge, they have to, I don't even know what you want to call it. They have to hit each other with these little stick things. Whoever wins with that will make an X and they'll win. So for this episode, I'm trying to remember what even happens. I've just watched this season and I already forget. Sean thinks there's a big zombie apocalypse. So he ends up meanderly running around trying to avoid it or whatever, and Chef ends up getting him because, you know, it's time for the challenge. So because Jasmine feels bad that, you know, Sean might be eliminated if their team loses, she ends up letting Sean take a swing. But then when Sean does take a swing, Jasmine gets mad? you literally just let him hit you, so I don't know what you're complaining about. Now, yeah, Sean did say something dumb like, take that, you zombie, or whatever. Yeah, I don't think that was going to appeal well to Jasmine. So, Jasmine's team ends up losing, and they get rid of Sammy. Because Amy comes back, who is the second worst total drama character of all time. And they end up fighting. Chris has enough of both of them and sends them both home. Literally, you can tell the writers just don't care anymore. They just throw random crap at us and hope we are fine with it. Even All Stars has better writing than this. Good lord, they just don't know what they want to do with this show anymore. It just makes you wonder. I think they forgot that split second that this is supposed to be a reality show. It's supposed to be like Survivor, but cartoon form, and they did perfect with it with the first 3 seasons. But once we got to Revenge, they just forgot how to write a season, I guess. But good lord, this episode is just so boring. And Chris is unusually very cruel to Ella just because she wants to sing, and even bans her from singing, and if she ever sings again, she's eliminated. So luckily Chris does get what's coming for him and gets attacked by a bear, which is the best part about this episode, for sure. Other than that, this episode is pretty bad, and it's definitely one of the worst episodes from pahkitew Island. Now let's get to, oh god, the top 10 already. So let's go to number 10, which is Mo Monkey, Mo Problems. This episode is nothing special. So the 2 teams have to find a monkey. A monkey has a coin in it for a vending machine. And I really don't remember which team makes it there first, because I've only seen this season 3 times, and it's an absolute trash season. One of the teams win, and they end up sending Ella home because she ended up singing. She ended up singing to free Dave from a bear. And all of them promised, we aren't going to tell Chris, don't worry. And of course, guess who tells Chris? The person who hates Ella, Sugar. Sugar's a pretty annoying character too, honestly. She had some okay moments, but she felt like such a... I don't even know. They tried way too hard with her character. They tried to make her way too much of a Scott and an Owen, and it just didn't work. They gotta make, enough copying the older cast. We gotta have new characters, not all these old characters. And that's why any other Revenge of the Islands cast is good, because they actually created, unique characters, and same with the reboot season. But pahkitew Island, I don't know what they were trying to do. And of course, because Sugar ended up tattletaling on Ella, she ends up going home. Which is a shame, because Ella is one of the better characters from this horrible season. Yeah, she is the stereotypic princess, but at least she was a character who wasn't picking fights with everyone. Then we have a bunch of dumb scenes with Jasmine getting tough with Sean because Sean hit her into the water even though she let him. That... I don't understand why she didn't like this. Because Sean called her a zombie? I don't know. And she was just then tired of the zombie stuff? I really don't know. I really don't know what this season, honestly. It's a shame. This is top 10, too, and this episode is still pretty bad. Alright, nothing else I have to say. It's just the same stuff I've been saying about the other episodes. Let's move on to number 9, which is Breakback Mountain. So in this episode, we have our final 4, that being Sky, Sean, Sugar, and Jasmine. Okay, not a bad final 4. Although I think Sugar kind of lucked her way up to the final 4, but that's okay. It's only one character. It's not like Disventure Camp Season 3, where we had 2 of the worst characters in the final 2. Oh, I can't wait to talk about Disventure Camp. That's going to be fun. Anywho, back to Total Drama. So in this episode, they have to walk up a mountain. It's that simple. And then when they get to whoever gets to the top first automatically makes it to the final 3. Oh, this is one of those episodes, aka the Purge episodes. Sometimes they go well, most times they fail miserably, and they get some of the best characters out. Like, for example, Jasmine ends up there last, thanks to Sugar, and she ends up going home. What is it with Sugar acting like a villain in the first half and last half of the season, but then in the middle she's just not? Like I said, the writers just didn't know how to write a season. They didn't know how to write this season. So anywho, some of the best parts of this episode are probably the Sean and Jasmine moments, seeing them bond together and stuff. Two of the better characters from Pahkitew Island. And then the worst parts were the Sky and Sugar scenes, because nothing happens with those two except Sugar trying to slow Sky down, so then Sugar has an easy way to make it to the final three. But that doesn't work, and instead Jasmine falls down, and Sugar traps her under a tree. Or I guess, yeah, Sugar does trap her under a tree by accident, but ends up liking what she did, I guess. I don't know. Then they send Jasmine home. So I guess this is like the only way they'd be able to send Jasmine home, because there's no way Sean would ever vote for Jasmine. The one thing I didn't like is Jasmine constantly saying, oh yeah, we're definitely going to split the money whenever someone wins. And it's kind of like, what if Sean doesn't want to? Although he did agree, I don't know. I don't remember. I only just recently seen this season one time, and then two other times a year and a half ago. So I don't really remember too much of this terrible season. So I feel like the episode, like I said once again, gets carried by Sean and Jasmine, but it gets slowed down by Sugar and Sky. There's way too much screen time on Sugar, and she's one of the worst characters in this season, honestly. I don't know why this episode did that, but whatever. It's not as bad as the other ones we talked about, but still a pretty boring episode. So let's move on to number 8, which is I Love You Not. Alright, time to talk about another character I dislike from Pahkitew Island. And that is our good old buddy Rodney, who falls in love with Jasmine, and then he falls in love with Amy, and then he falls in love with Scarlet, and he doesn't know who he loves, so he gets sent home because it's such a boring plot. That's what a lot of these feel like. They get sent home because they have such a boring plot. This is the first episode that I was like, oh, yeah, this is why I don't like Pahkitew Island. And this is the episode that started that. Although it did start a lot more in A Blast from the Past, but this one, I mean, I still definitely started noticing a lot wrong with it. So for the challenge today, they have to put on these shock collars and not say a lie, or else this very meh chicken, well, very meh character chick, I don't even know what to say about it. I don't know if I like it or dislike it. Probably dislike it, but whatever. Ends up coming over and will shock you if she figures out that you're saying a lie. One character that really makes this episode annoying is Chris. Because all he does is just stand there and constantly want everyone to get shocked, which is, for one, extremely out of character, and constantly yell at Ella for stupid stuff. Like, apparently Ella wanted to start a fight with Sugar. I don't know where in the right mind he got that from, but that's just, I don't even know what the words are. That's just, it's showing you how terrible the writing was this season. And how they just didn't care and just did whatever the heck they felt like. They just threw up their hands and just made a bunch of mush that a kindergartner would have made. That's exactly how I feel about this season. Anywho, back to this episode. They got rid of Rodney because Rodney lost the challenge for his team because he kept saying a bunch of lies, I guess. I don't know. It's dumb. It's a dumb episode. I mean, there's some decent parts, but for the most part, it's just another pretty meh episode. So, nothing else I have to say. Let's move on to number 7, which is Twinning Isn't Everything. We've moved on to the episode that is probably the most forgettable of the whole season. So, the whole time, it's focused on one of my absolute least favorite characters, Amy, and her sister, Sammy, who are twins. And one is really nice, and the other one is a spoiled brat who gets everything she wants and is completely mean to her sister. Of course, that's the storyline we get for this episode. And the challenge this time is throwing balloons at the other team. Sometimes they're full of water, maybe jelly, maybe honey. Who knows? It's Chris from Pahkitew Island. What do you expect? There could be a crocodile hiding in there. You never know. Um, so the main focus, like I said, of this episode is Amy and Sammy versus each other, for the most part. Sammy doesn't really know how to stick up for her sister, yet gets really mad at her, and eventually, thanks to the help of Jasmine, ends up finally sticking up for herself and getting Amy the karma she deserves, aka eating, I don't even know what it is, but something that makes her throat hurt really bad to make, because everyone I guess voted for Sammy because her whole team is full of villains besides Jasmine, and of course Rodney, who loves Amy, so they end up voting for Sammy, who Sammy pretends is Amy, and yeah. Basically, Amy goes home, and everyone thinks it's Sammy who goes home. So now Sammy has to pretend to be Amy. Just great. So we get to see that for 2 more episodes until Sammy goes home as well. Sammy is another decent character from Pahkitew Island. The problem is we didn't really get to see much of her, and it's mainly just her and her sister fighting, and her sister winning at everything. I hate Amy. She's such an unlikable brat of a character. She's like Taylor on steroids. Like, it's ridiculous. And I'm glad Amy was the 3rd one to get booted, but still, like, geez. They had to have that stupid thing in a blast to a past with her coming back just for revenge. Why did they need to do that? It ended fine with Amy going home getting karma. They didn't need to bring her back just to get karma on her sister who doesn't deserve karma at all. Like I said, millions of times, the writing this season was garbage. And this episode was pretty meh overall. They got rid of Amy, thank the Lord, but other than that, it's just an okay, below average episode. So let's move to number 6, which is Hurl and Go Seek. Finally, many episodes later, we're finally out of the below average for episodes, but we're still not above average in episodes, because this episode does have its negatives about it as well. So this is the first merge challenge, and they have to drink this disgusting liquid, which is extremely expired and extremely disgusting, because, you know, they just have to bring the bunch of disgustingness back in every season, and just make it worse in this season in particular. So Sugar, who ends up winning the challenge because she loves food so much, I think we pretty much accomplished that because she's a clone of Owen, she ends up having to find everyone, and she got immunity for some reason. So this is the episode that we really got to see Dave just fall drastically into this very annoying, greedy, stupid character who doesn't care about anything except for Sky. Yes, we know. You love Sky. Well, Sky may love you, but she doesn't want to date you. And you don't want to listen to what she has to say, because Sky said, but Dave didn't want to listen to the but. Well, your funeral, Dave. Unfortunately, he just ended up being the main character of this episode, of course, and the whole time it's just annoyance of Dave crying and whining that he can't get Sky because Sky doesn't want him. It's so obnoxiously annoying. Another one of the million things I hate about this season is this season basically tells you who's going to be eliminated. Every episode that the eliminated person always gets the most screen time. Look at episode 3 that we just talked about. Amy was getting the most screen time out of anyone. She got eliminated. Then the next one after that, Rodney got the most screen time, and then he got eliminated. And then Topher got the most screen time and got eliminated. And then Dave, and then Scarlett and Max. Like I said, the writers just don't care anymore. They're like, alright, here's characters, and the one who's going to be the most popular in this certain episode will be the one going eliminated, for the most part. Unfortunately, so then everyone who ends up drinking this ends up getting extremely sick. So they, of course, have to have a lot of barfing scenes and a lot of just... Like I said, it's just like the brunch of disgustingness, but it's in Pahkitew Island, so it's worse. The hide-and-go-seek part is interesting, but it's still worse than the hide-and-go-seek episode from Season 1. Way worse than that episode, by the way, since Island was actually a good season. There was some interesting things, like the island them finding out that the island is actually completely artificial, basically. The ending scene is kind of funny with a bunch of random things getting turned on and off and changing around when Chris is just trying to say, "Welcome back to next time on Pahkitew Island." And this is when Scarlett's villain arc starts. Thank the Lord Dave goes home in this episode, because he's obnoxious, as we all know. And he went home just because he voted for himself. Otherwise, it would have been Sky. I don't know why people were mad at Sky for finally telling off Dave. Dave is annoying. Thank the Lord he went home in this episode. And there was only... After this episode, there's only one good episode left after this episode, in the order of the episodes. Yeah, Hurling Go Seek. There you go. Now let's move on to number 5, which is 3 Zones and a Baby. We're at number 5, and episodes are still not above average yet. But at least this episode did have some goofiness in it, for once. So, for this episode, I don't remember much of it. I just remember that the contestants had to carry babies around with them. Okay, which I think is a kind of interesting twist, which I actually didn't mind for once the challenge. So they had to take these babies around, and Max ends up bonding with his baby big time and ends up wanting to take him with him, which led to a kind of silly plot twist. And that's basically the episode. They got rid of Topher because Topher wanted to take over the show and became another villain of this show. Why does this season have so many villains? And I guess the main one is Chris himself. So, they end up getting rid of Topher, which is fine. I don't find Topher an interesting character at all. I think he survived way longer than he needed, but whatever. This episode actually isn't half bad for once. It's still boring. This is the episode that Dave really started going downhill, though, noticing how Sky is now on a different team and is now sabotaging him instead of helping him, which hurts Dave's feelings, so Dave throws a little fit. Those parts of this episode get annoying, but there is some good things about this episode, so I don't think we're quite on above average, but at least this episode was fine enough. Finally, an episode that didn't feel boring, so I'll give it that. Let's move on to number 4, which is... This is The Pits. Once again, finally an episode that doesn't have a bad challenge. So the episode starts with them in these little balls, and they end up getting rolled down a pit, and now they have to try to find their way out. Pretty simple, in theory, but of course Chris always has a few tricks up his sleeve. So we learn that Jasmine is very afraid of tight spaces, which is kind of interesting, gives her some character development. Actual character development in Pahkitew Island? Like I said, there is a few actual good characters. So of course Max and Scarlett go their way, Jasmine and Topher go their way, and then the whole other team goes their own way. So they all eventually end up out of the pit, but apparently they did it wrong, and Chris gets mad at them and burns their prize, because this is a reward challenge and no one goes home. So he ends up making Chef burn their food. Okay, I mean, I really don't have words for this episode. It's fine. It's not a bad episode, thank God. It's finally not a boring episode. It has some interesting points here and there. It's not all that bad, but it's still nowhere near the best of the best episodes. But hey, it's good enough to make number 4 for me. Nothing else I have to say, so let's move on to number 3, which is... So, this is my team. The very first episode of Total Drama Pahkitew Island, and it's way better than the finale to Pahkitew Island. So, there could be some decent things in this season, by the looks of this first episode, because the first episode actually isn't half bad. We learn, obviously, they're on a new island now, thanks to Chris blowing up the last island, so for the first episode they have to grab supplies to build their new house, or shelter, whatever. Jasmine's team ends up building a whole treehouse, while Sean's team ends up building a tower thing, thanks to Leonard, the awkward, weird wizard guy. And of course, Sugar is blinded by him being super dumb, when Sugar is dumb herself. I hate Sugar, I hate Leonard. Anywho, Sean's team ends up losing because the whole house that Leonard builds ends up falling over. So the first person going home is Beardo, who's literally just a clone of Beverly from Revenge of the Island. Literally, two characters who don't talk. They're both kind of designed the same. This is going to be a wild start to pahkitew Island. There is some potential, though, to have some at least good characters, right? I mean, they showed some decent characters, although I think the better cast is probably on Jasmine's team, but I don't know. That's a tough one. And that's basically how the episode goes. It's not that bad, honestly. I like the intro where they're propelling out of a plane, or parachuting out of a plane, and the team who doesn't get a parachute is on one team, the team who does get a parachute is on another team. And I like how Chef had to jump out of the plane as well, and he, of course, doesn't get a parachute, which is finally a hilarious moment in pahkitew Island, and finally a good Chef moment. Finally a moment with Chef in this season. Good lord. There's like no Chef moments anymore. Not a bad episode for pahkitew Island. Still not my favorite episode, and I would still probably give this a C tier, but finally at least an episode that isn't bad. So let's move on to my second favorite episode from pahkitew Island, which is I Love You, Grease Pig. Okay, an obstacle course challenge. Those ones usually aren't that bad. So for this, I guess, obstacle course challenge, both teams have to lure a pig through it and get to the very end. There's some interesting things that happen, like Sugar bonding with the pig and doesn't want to let him go, and then Ella singing to the pig, which completely tames the pig and listens to anything Ella does, which is kind of interesting. I like the way they ended up using Ella's character. The only problem is that she kind of ended up turning into wasted potential and got eliminated way too early. Then of course your good characters like Sean and Jasmine and Sky, some other little moments here and there, and then we got to say bye to Leonard, and that was the episode. Thank God, because Leonard is annoying, because it's kind of hard to like Leonard. I mean, I don't know anyone who likes Leonard. He's annoying, but he's from pahkitew Island, so there's only like a few actual good characters from pahkitew Island. So luckily Leonard went home nice and early, so we wouldn't see him back until Redonkulous Race, which we'll talk about that when we eventually talk about Redonkulous Race. So, yeah, I think this episode ain't half bad. Would it be above average, though? Ooh, I don't know. I don't really know. Because there's still some things I don't like about the episode, like the way Sugar treats Ella, and a few other things here and there, and of course our cast itself. Alright, let's move on to my favorite episode of pahkitew Island, and that is Scarlet Fever. Okay, so this is like one of the only episodes from this season that actually goes like off-route, off script, off the show, the reality show and stuff. But it ends up being my favorite episode of the whole season because of that. Instead of them focusing on our lame challenges this season with our lame cast, we have to go off script to stop Scarlet, which is actually an actual interesting plot for once in this episode. Scarlet as a twist villain, I know a lot of people didn't like, but it's a better thing than a lot of the other things they tried to come up with this season, so I don't mind it. And I love the build-up. She didn't just snap her fingers and all of a sudden she's evil. No, she definitely built up to this point, which was really nice, and so it didn't feel just super random. So her and Max break into this, I guess, secret base that controls the whole island, because like I said, the island is artificial. So Scarlet ends up revealing her true colors, and I forget what she does to Max, but Max runs away in fear because he's afraid of Scarlet. And Scarlet will blow up the whole island if she doesn't get the $1 million from Chris, which Chris does not. Because Chris is safe in his little helicopter with Chef. So wow, another time I actually said the word Chef. We should count how many times I said that this whole video. Anywho, so the challenge for the day is the cast has to go and stop Scarlet, which is actually a interesting plot for once. Instead of it just being these dumb challenges with these dumb characters, we're finally seeing an interesting plot going on where they have to stop Scarlet from blowing up the island, which actually leads to some interesting, intense moments. And also, finally, no Dave. Thank the Lord, he was getting so annoying. But unfortunately, once Scarlet and Max go home, the rest of the season just gets really dry and boring. But at least we had an actual good episode. This is the only episode this season that I could consider good. Like, obviously, Scarlet ends up going home because they end up finding her and trapping her. And because Chris doesn't want any more villains, he sends Max home too. Okay, fair enough. What I like is that this episode actually felt like something. Some of those other episodes were just so boring and dry and didn't really have anything in it, but this one actually had something in it to make it really interesting, and I really liked it. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. There's still a lot of problems with this episode, with the cast, with the challenge itself, with this episode in general, but for Pahkitew Island, I can consider it my favorite episode. Oh boy, this was a wild ride. I've never seen so many bad episodes in one season. Now, yeah, this season doesn't have Sunday Muddy Sunday, thank God, but that don't mean anything. Sunday Muddy Sunday was the only truly horrible episode from All Stars, while the rest were just pretty boring. For this season, there was a miles amount of boring episodes compared to the other seasons, even All Stars. Like, the only episode that I could consider almost 0% boring is Scarlet Fever, because it's the only one that has a really interesting plot and actually goes outside the story and does something different for once, and expands on some of these characters for once too. But yeah, man, Pahkitew Island, that was an interesting season to rewatch. After this, I probably won't rewatch Pahkitew Island ever again unless I'm extremely bored and want to rewatch it, but most likely, 99.9% chance, I will never watch Pahkitew Island again. I only rewatched it just so I can do this video and get a better look into some of these episodes. But, oh boy, Pahkitew Island. Pahkitew Island. Where do I begin with you? Last year, when I ranked every Total Drama season, I ranked Pahkitew Island the worst out of the seasons. And does my opinion remain the same today? Absolutely. I know sometimes people say All Stars is the worst, but at least All Stars had a really good cast. Like a lot of fan favorites from Revenge and the original season, which ended up being really great to watch. And it wasn't the best season ever, but at least we had a really good cast to watch. This, I don't know what they were trying to do with this. And anything from All Stars, they just made worse. There's no true villain this season. The writing is so far off that it doesn't even feel like the same show anymore. They're on a different island, which is all artificial, and it's extremely boring. The cast itself is pretty boring. Chris is so annoying this season. They hardly show Chef. Still only, 13, 16 competitors. That is 14 competitors. That is not enough. But I can easily consider Pahkitew Island the absolute worst season of Total Drama history. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Also, the fact, Redonkulous Race, I definitely want to rank those episodes too, but it'll probably take me a little longer because there's so many episodes of Redonkulous Race, and I already have a lot of this year booked with video ideas. So, Redonkulous Race might come next year. Also the fact that Stuffed Animal Amazing Race Episode 3 won't come tomorrow, it'll come on Wednesday, because tomorrow I'm going to be busy, so I'll make it Wednesday, so it should be available Wednesday. So I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.